Hi, it's Anthony Gaddy here, and welcome back for this third and final part of niche selection. What I want to share with you is hang in there, because within 30 minutes from here, you will not only have completed the niche selection exercise, ideally where you're going to be is in a position of confidence, because you will have bedded down the three most important niches, the three specific groups of people or businesses that you can really confidently focus all of your marketing, attention and resources on, and ideally be a lot more successful with each and every single one of the marketing initiatives that you bring to market over the next 6 to 12 months. So really, I commend you for the work you've done so far with the niche selection. Hang in there, you're at the meat in the sandwich. Let's move right into the exercise where you'll progress it step by step using the guidance and the template, and you will actually come to conclusions within 30 minutes. Go for it. So, how to establish your ideal niches? Well, I'm going to show you the pattern here, and then we're actually going to go through and execute the pattern. Here's the pattern. First key thing to do is to actually identify your strengths and your passions. In other words, what are some of the skills of you and your organization? And then in particular, what are you really passionate about? Maybe which group of people are you passionate about working with? Next thing is then to identify possible ways to segment or partition your market. So until now, I've spoken about a couple of ways. We've spoken about size of business is one way. I've spoken about distinct characteristics, i.e. golf players versus other distinct groups. So we'll work through the different ways in which you can segment. You can do it by geography, size of business, attributes, age of business, revenue of business. There's a few ways, and we're going to work through those. And from there, you actually want to end up creating a short list of 6 possible niches. Hang on a minute. Didn't this guy say that we want to have 3 defined niches that we want to go after? Well, the answer is yes. We want to have 3 defined niches, but remember, we also want to have 3 other niches in the parking lot. In case one of the initial niches doesn't work out exactly as we want it to, we want to then be very clear on which is the next niche that we want to look at. So you create a short list of 6 possible niches, and then you actually test the niches. So when I say test the niches, it's a very practical exercise that we're going to walk through. It's on a single sheet. You'll actually test the niches against some very specific questions so that you can rank them using scores. And from there, you'll actually come up with your 3 top, your 3 in the parking lot, and as step 5, you'll actually capture those results into your marketing plan, which ideally is now forming part of your overall business plan. Who can guess what the final step in the process is? Jot it down on a sheet of paper in front of you. It's one word. It's one word only. What will I be asking you to do at the end of step 5? I'll give you a clue. Woohoo! Of course, celebrate. Celebrate. I will want you to celebrate once you've completed this piece of work, because this is just one of the most fundamental pieces of work that you will complete on this entire program. Why? Because if you get it right, or if you even get it half right, all of your marketing efforts are going to become easier. Not only will they become easier, it will become cheaper for you. So you will be able to invest less money to get same size or bigger result. Why? Because you won't be using a spray gun effect and approach, and you won't be using a trawling net. You'll be using some very carefully selected fishing rods with some very thoughtfully selected bait. So you'll be very, very clear on which fish you're actually looking for. So I'm going to escape from here, and I'm actually going to open soft copy of the niche selection workbook. I encourage you to actually open your own soft copy and to follow my voice rather than to passively follow my screen. So hopefully you've got the niche selection workbook open in front of you by now. And for a bit of humor, I've just opened up this workbook by telling you You've either got to get it right, i.e. you've got to get your niche selection right, or you'll end up wasting time and money and lose out on a lot actually of new business. So I've shared the analogy with you already. If you've got $500,000 to spend on the trawling net, good luck, go ahead. But for everybody else, I highly recommend completing this niche selection exercise, really to help you confirm that you're targeting the right groups of company, or to confirm which groups you should be targeting to achieve more success with considerably less effort. So where do we need to be? Where do we want to be by the end of using this specific tool? The outcomes are very clear. You want to be very clear on the 3 target niches, the specific clusters or companies confirmed, and you want to have 3 more niches confirmed as waiting in the parking lot. And another key outcome is you actually want to be left with in a position of confidence that you can direct all your marketing efforts in a very specific direction. So if you move to page 2, I've actually got the snapshot in there. That's the snapshot that I've just shown you on the PowerPoint slides. That's the snapshot of the pathway that we'll take. And what we're going to do right now is step into identifying your strengths and passions. So what I'd like you to do is to go to page 3 of the workbook, and in page 3, on page 3, I want you to answer those first 3 questions that are under step 1. So question A should be an easy one for you by now, because you've already covered off your value proposition on one of our previous sessions. But the question that we're asking is, what is the main value offering which you deliver? In other words, what's your value proposition? Now I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to answer each of these questions. I'll just walk through the question, and you can move through them pretty quickly. Second question is, are there any industries or groups of customers or potential customers that you feel very passionate about? Are there any groups of people, groups of customers that you really enjoy working with? And just appeal to your current or your recent experience. There might be 1 or 2 groups that really jump out as enjoyable for you. You know a lot in that area. You're pretty passionate about spending more time in that area. Then question C there, if you look at your current customer base, is there any group of customers that stand out for you as being a distinct group where you've got a lot of experience? And kind of related to that question, that second question under question C, is, are there any distinct groups of customers where you've got a strong track record? So you may have some well-established connections and relationships. What I want you to do is to physically type your answers into those boxes, because this will be part of your workbook, and I'm going to give you a minute per each of those questions, A, B, and C. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and when 3 minutes are up, you will hear the world famous melodic bell, which sounds something like this. When you hear the melodic bell, please bring your attention back to me and to my voice. Right now, take 3 minutes to complete the questions. Time starts now. They should be halfway by now. You should be halfway through question B. Got a minute and a half left. Twenty more seconds. You should be finishing question C. Okay, we're at 3 minutes. Hopefully you've gone pretty well there and you've worked out with great clarity, first of all, what's your value prop, second of all, what are you passionate about, and third of all, where do you already have a track record in some relationships. What I want us to do now is to work out the possible ways to slice up your market and to identify the specific groups of customers, i.e. the niches, that will be most profitable for you to pursue. So this is quite a simple process. It does have a number of steps though. Walk with me on this one. The first thing to do is to consider the list of possible ways to slice up your market in table 1. So if you scroll down to table 1, you will notice that there are a number of ways already captured. The first is the age or maturity of the company. The second is geographic location, so where are they physically located. Third one is number of employees. A fourth one is revenue. So the first thing I want you to do is to actually reduce the list of possible ways simply by deleting. I want you to actually delete any of the possible ways that are in that current table which you think just don't apply to you. Hopefully that request, that instruction is clear. Cross out or delete any of the possible ways on the list which will not be useful to your evaluation. So the example I've put here is if you'd be happy to target both young and more mature businesses, then the age of the business is not relevant. So in that case, delete that first possible way, the age and maturity of the company. So just take a quick minute to work out, of the ones that are already in there, which one or more would not be relevant to you and your business, and physically delete them from the table. I'll give you about 20 seconds to quickly look through. 1, 2, 3, 4. Delete the ones that are not relevant. Okay, next step is for you to physically add any possible ways which will be relevant, which are not yet in the table. So the example here is if you want to add a criteria like the business has multiple offices around the country as a possible way, then do this in column A in table 1. So you'll see at the bottom we've got other possible way 1 and then other possible way 2. So if you think of a first way, just replace the entry there that says other possible way 1 and insert in there, replace those words, insert in there the criteria that you want to put in, that you think might be more relevant or particularly relevant to your business. And by the way, I put a note in there, it's not necessary to invent something for this step. So if the current setup is sufficient for you, then you can just leave it as is, having deleted the extra options. Some people ask, when we run this exercise, can I give some examples that make it even clearer? Two criteria that we would put in for our own business. One is they must be business to business. So a possible way for me to break up the market is to work out, are they a business to business entity, i.e. is it a business selling goods and services to another business? The specific conditions that I would then put in the orange column B is the business must be targeting other businesses and always does business via invoice. So they're not a cash business, they do business via invoicing their customers. So that's one additional possible way. I'll give you another 20 seconds just to think through one or more ways that might be relevant to you. Okay, and then the last step that I want you to do relating to the possible ways table is to actually modify any of the specific conditions in column B. So if you're looking at my screen, you'll see they're in orange. If you're looking at your own screen, same thing. Column B, specific conditions. What I want you to do there is to modify the conditions that are already against the existing entries so that they make sense to you and so that they are directly relevant to you and your business. And if you added in an additional possible way or an additional couple of possible ways, now's your chance to actually put in the specific conditions. So in my example, the possible way was that must be business to business. The specific condition is they are a business entity servicing other businesses, doing their business via invoice. Just tighten up on those special conditions. Just tighten them up a little bit. Add words, delete words. For the age or maturity of the business, don't have all of those criteria. Maybe you want to say they are between 2 and 5 years old. Then delete the rest. A possible way that we often hear people add is that the business must be 2+ years old. Then under the specific conditions, they put something like the business now has a steady cash flow. It's not a brand new business still hunting for its first customers. So as you think through this, what this is doing is it's allowing you to specify some very particular criteria that allow you to work out one group of businesses versus the rest. It will allow you to make your specific niche segments very distinguishable compared to all the other people and businesses that might be out there. "20 more seconds. We're moving at a reasonable pace. Stick with me. Keep with me." Okay, by now you should be just about complete with your possible ways table. So ideally by now you have a number of very specific criteria in column A, the possible ways, and you're now very tight on these specific conditions in column B that apply to the possible ways. So here we're at the business end of the game, so to speak. If this was a marathon, at this point right here, I'd be standing on the side handing you a sponge and a Coke, or whatever it is they put in the energy drinks these days, telling you to hang in there. The stadium is near. Once you get to the stadium, it's a couple of laps, and this race is finished. So stick with me. Grab that sponge. Take a physical sip of the tea or the coffee that you might have there, and let's jump into the next section. Where I want to take you to now is to step 3. In step 3, I want you to actually create a short list of 6 possible niches. I'm going to show you here how we're going to do it. So the first thing to do is to actually use your list of possible ways in column A in the table that you've just completed, and to create a list of 6 possible industries or categories that you could pursue that will possibly meet a lot, hopefully most of the specific conditions that you've set in your table above, and then to actually place these in a list. So as a starting point, you can place them on a sheet of paper. You can just write them down for your list. So you might notice that you land up with 4, you might notice that you land up with 8 or 9. So maybe start with a scrap piece of paper, and here's the steps that I want you to follow to come up with your list. First option is to actually use the list of possible industries in Annex 1. So if you scroll to the very end of this workbook, in Annex 1 there's actually a list of industries that we've put there. So what you can do is, if you're doing it on hard copy, you can circle them. If you're doing it on soft copy on your computer, then use some highlighter. So you can use the highlighting under your editing function and edit the ones that stand out for you as potentially fitting in with the list of possible ways. So I'll give you an example there. If I said under the list of possible ways that I want to work with companies that are focused on technology, when I went to this list of industries, I would look for IT service providers. So I notice that's something we can actually add to this list, IT service providers, and I would put web developers on the list. I would highlight those. I would pretty much look through the list and highlight any people. Or if I said specifically services businesses is a key category, a list of ways that I want to include, I would then go to this list. Use the list as the starting point. So do that right now. Have a look at the list. Highlight on the list any of the industries that really stand out or really jump out for you. And as soon as you've highlighted the ones that stand out for you, I want you to potentially add some categories. You can then start adding to the list of industries specific categories that came out of your list of possible ways. So the example that I give here in point B under step 3 is companies that are less than 1 year old. So if I look at point C, I want you to scan through the list of possible industries and also any possible ways that you added in the table when you were working with table 1. And the next thing that I want you to do is to consider each of the possible industries which you're passionate about. Remember at the start of this exercise you actually jotted down areas that you're passionate about, or you've already got a track record. Maybe 1 or 2 areas or clusters of business jump out where there's less competition. That might be a really good one to go after. So really work with the information that you've already got, and also use your intuition. what I want you to do is just progress. I'm looking here at step 3, and I'm looking at points A through E. Step 3, I'm looking at points A through E. And what I want you to do is to initially be creative and put as many industries or possible categories on your list as you think might be useful, might be interesting for you to pursue. And slowly, as you think it through and use your intuition, I will want you to steadily narrow your list down to a maximum of 6 possible industries or categories. Now, I don't want you to rush this piece, because it's an important piece to think about, to think carefully and to actually get it right. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes just for this piece alone. I'm talking here about the completion of step 3. Step 3, which is on page 5 of the workbook, and specifically to go through steps A, B, C, D, and E. Be creative, be playful. When you're first coming up with a list, put anything on there which you think might be a goer. Don't let the critical brain, the analytical brain, start to eliminate until you've actually come up with quite a healthy list. The list we have is only a starting point. Think about who's already in your customer base. Creatively think about which kinds of customers might you want to pursue that are not in the customer base. Spend 5 minutes working it out. I will ring the bell when 5 minutes are up, and at that point I'll give you 1 additional minute to narrow it down, to narrow your list down so that you bring it down to precisely 6. You will know when you hear the bell that your brain is good to go and that you are capable of narrowing a list down to 6. Know also that it doesn't matter if you get it slightly wrong. It's okay, because you will have the fruit of your work and you are able to make changes on the fly. That's the beauty of marketing. It's the game of marketing. So don't feel pressurized to get it perfect. You want to get it to 90%. Spend 4 more minutes. I'll then ring the bell. You'll have 1 additional minute. Take your time. You have 2 more minutes in your creative process before you narrow the list down. And try and think beyond the industry segments. If you are a web developer, you will include a category of marketing managers. If you are a recruitment specialist, you might put in the hiring manager, or you might put in HR managers / HR directors. Those are very distinct groups or clusters of people. If you are in the IT services game, you might put in IT managers as a distinct cluster of people. Or you might put in marketing managers or sales directors, where you can help them differentiate using technology. So you might be targeting a specific cluster of people based on their title. Okay, here is the sound of the melodious bell. What that particular bell chime means is it's time to start narrowing down your list. So using a combination of your intuition and logic, based on now being aware of what your value proposition is, what you're passionate about, what your track record already is, that's in this company or previous companies you've worked with, where you already have some relationships in particular segments. I want you at this point to bring it down to a list of 6. 6 possible industries, categories. I'm just going to refer to them as your short list of 6. These are 6 possible niches, as our American friends like to call them, niches. I always thought Nietzsche was a philosopher. Your 6 possible niches. Take 1 minute to narrow the field down, but I want you to store your creative list somewhere safe. So at some stage in the future, you might want to come back and revisit. At that point, I don't want you to have to redo all the work. I want you just to be able to go back and look at your list, and you'll be able to progress the exercise again from step 3 or from step 4. Okay, hopefully by now you have your short list of 6. And what I want you to do is to actually place the names of the categories, the names of these potential niches in the short list of 6. You'll see that is table 2 on page 5. So there are headings there, niche 1, niche 2, niche 3. Just pop those niches in. And ideally, if already at an intuitive level there are 3 that stand out as being ahead of the remaining 3, you might want to populate niches 1, 2 and 3 with the ones that stand out. If they don't yet stand out, that's okay. In fact, it's perfect. Because what we're going to do now is we're actually going to subject these niches to the niche attractiveness test. Now, I'm just going to take a very short time out here to give you some more inspiration. I may have mentioned to you the guys at TIBA. These guys progressed this niche attractiveness test, and jeepers, if I was sitting opposite someone who worked for an enormous market research company, or specifically who outright specialized in niche selection, I have actually done that. I have actually sought guidance from such a person in pulling this process together. this lady Lisa, her initial response was she was mortified that we would take such a quick set of steps, because she was used to working on programs where organizations would invest $150,000 in months and months and months of work preparation and analysis to do the niche selection exercise. When I explained to her exactly what we were doing and the fact that a small mistake could be found out in 2 or 3 months and modified, she changed her thinking, and in fact ultimately she landed up helping and contributing to this process. So if I bring it back to the guys at TIBA, they progressed this process some time ago. They completed the table that you're about to complete, and it was through there that they really began to focus on a very specific number of niche areas and stop trying to service the fish and chip shop down the road, who I think they would actually do an amazing job at servicing. But wow, it just wasn't the most profitable way for them to go forward, and it certainly wasn't exploiting their full potential and the full talents that the company is capable of. Now they play in a much bigger field, in a much they play with much larger companies, and that's more their sweet spot, where they're really able to add value, and the sizes of the deals are bigger and the sizes of the technology problems are bigger. And by the way, TIBA are very good at solving those kinds of problems, so they've really found their niche. And once they honed in, this was an initiative by Craig Stones, once they really honed in on the people who use CAD software, talking here about the architects, designers, construction, the building and construction people, they were able to secure a meeting with a director of a particular software distribution company, and he was so impressed with what TIBA was doing that after attending one of their workshops, he said, "Listen guys, I've got 28,000 customers. Do you want to meet all of them at once? In other words, do you want me to refer the whole lot to you at once, or would you like me to refer them in lots of 1,000? So just think about the potential behind that. Think about how much easier it became for TIBA to get an audience with new prospects once they have progressed this exercise. And I'm going to show you that exact exercise now. So let's go down to page 6. Page 6 of this niche selection workbook. And what we're going to do here is we're going to apply the niche attractiveness test. So the niche attractiveness test, I'm going to take you through step by step. In a fairly short space of time, you're going to come to your answers with confidence. So what I want you to do is actually have a look at the table rather than the instructions. So the table you will find on the very next page. So if you bring the table up on your screen, I'll actually talk you through the instructions. So ideally, soft copy on your screen, page 7 of the workbook. I will navigate to the instructions and I'll take you through step by step. So there are three things for you to do. The first one is to replace the niche titles on the top right side. So where you see on the top right it says niche titles, the potential niches, you actually see there niche 1, niche 2, niche 3. I want you to replace those words, niche 1, etc., with the names that you've got in your short list of 6. Take the names from your short list of 6 and pop them in one at a time. So the example I have, if the first potential niche for you was accounting firms, then replace the word niche 1 with accounting firms. One by one until you've got all 6 in the table. I'll give you just a few seconds to do that. And now that you've done that, what I want you to do for each of the niches, so you've now got them in your table, I want you to progress, and I'll take you through them one at a time. What we're going to do is we're actually going to, for each one of the niche industries, we're actually going to complete the table by answering each of the questions that appear down the left side of this niche attractiveness table. So I'll take you through. At the top of the table, I've just put in an example so that you can see how to answer it. On the far left is the question. In the middle of the table is the valuation answer options for each of the questions, and on the right is space for you to put your response. So if the first one, the example question, is how much do you enjoy working with a niche? Well, someone better do a check on Ant's English here, because if the answer is very lots, then you would give that particular niche. So let's say I was looking at niche 1, which in my case would be accountants. How much do I enjoy working with the niche? If I enjoy working with them a lot, i.e. I'm picking the word very, I would pop a score of 4 into that spot on the table. If I somewhat enjoy working with them, I'd give it a 3. If I get very little enjoyment working with them, I'd give it a 2. If I don't enjoy working with them at all, I'd give it a 1. And I would then go and pop in a single score for each one of the niches, 1 through 6. So let's start with question 1. Question 1 is this group easy to tell apart from other groups in the market and easy to access? So if I use my example for me, which was accountants, are they easy to tell apart? Absolutely. A company or a person is either an accountant or they're not. Are they easy to access? Absolutely. It's very easy to secure a list of registered accountants or registered accounting firms. So for that one, I would pop a score of 4 in there. Likewise, if I had hole-in-one golf players as one of my potential niches, I'd be giving them a 4 as well. Very easy to tell apart, quite easy to access once you know how. So what I want you to do is to take a minute here, and for each of your niches 1 through 6, you pop a score in relating to question 1. I know for some people the brain is thinking, okay, cool, I got the hang of this, can I switch off and I'll do this later? My encouragement to you, stick with me, let's work with the process. Use the time that you've allocated, let's get this piece of work done. You'll be amazed at how the scores might jump out at you by the end. Okay, let's move on to question 2 now. How well do you understand the problems or challenges of this niche? So are you already familiar with the problems in this niche? If the answer is completely, and I want you to evaluate each one of your niches now. If the answer is completely, you give it a 4. If it's mostly, you give it a 3. If it's somewhat, you give it a 2. And if at this point it's not at all, you give it a 1. So physically, please pop a score into each one of the boxes related to question 2 as you evaluate each one of those potential niches. Okay, next question. How well do your offerings and differentiators actually address this niche's problems? So do you have specific service offerings, or even better than that, do you have some service offerings that are different to your competitors, which actually address the niche's problems? If your offerings address the problems completely, give it a 4, mostly give it a 3, somewhat give it a 2, not at all, give it a 1. This is a pretty easy question, so move quite quickly across each of the niches. Question 4. Here's a really good one to get your head around. How many competitors do you have trying to service this niche? Now there might be people who are competing directly with you, or it might even be a different service to what you provide, but still competing for the mindshare. Just think about that. If you are someone who arranges travel holidays for people, you might be competing with other travel holiday companies, or you might be competing with the local cinemas that can actually also take up a lot of people's leisure time. They might decide to spend more time on the golf course and in the cinema rather than taking a holiday. So think about it from that direction. Direct competitors and not so obvious competitors. How many competitors do you have trying to service this particular niche? Again, the scoring system is pretty obvious. It's a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1 for each one of your potential niches. Work your way across the table and pop in the scores that are most appropriate. Next question, question number 5. How much experience do you already have within the niche? How much experience do you already have within the niche? If you've got a lot, put a 4 in. If you've got some, give it a 3. Very little, give it a 2. If you have none, give it a 1. And you might want to address question 6 at the same time. It's a slightly different question but related, which is, what level of track record and relationships do you have in the niche which you can potentially leverage? Quickly let your brain think ahead here. If you already have relationships in that niche, you've already serviced a particular customer that belongs to that cluster, you could do a video testimonial with that customer. You could really focus your energy on that particular niche segment, that industry, that cluster, that group. You can demonstrate a track record of results in another company similar to the companies that you're about to target. So have a go at answering questions 5 and 6 simultaneously. Work your way across the table. Okay, here's an interesting question, question number 7. Are there barriers or conditions to entry for this particular niche? So by way of example, if you said you wish to sell more goods and services to extremely large corporations that have buying departments, a barrier might be that a lot of those organizations already have a list of preferred providers. So step 1 would be first to try and get on the list, then to try and sell the goods and services. Getting on that list might be a pretty big barrier to entry. So think about the specific niches that you are contemplating here and quickly ask yourself the question, what sort of barriers are there in place? If there are none, give that particular niche a score of 4. If there are a few, give it a 3. If there are significant barriers, give it a 2, and if there are pretty high barriers, give it a 1. Work your way across the table and pop in the scores. Okay, let's move to question 8, which is, how passionate are you about working with this niche? How passionate are you about working with this niche? Just imagine you're getting out of bed tomorrow morning, you're going to go spend a whole bunch of time with people or businesses in each of these particular niches. Are you jumping out of bed with excitement? If the answer is yes, give it a 4. If you're thinking, oh, it's okay, I'd be quite interested, give it a 3. If you're thinking, ooh, not very interested, give it a 2. And if you're thinking, geez, I'd rather lay tucked under the blankies for another couple of hours, give it a 1. Okay, the final question to ask in this table is, what is the volume / revenue / profit potential of the niche? Remember we asked that question before. If you could secure a reasonable number of players in that particular niche as customers, would it actually be profitable for you? In other words, is there sufficient volume and profit in that particular category that if you did reasonably well, or you secured a reasonable proportion, you could actually make some good profit for your business? If the volume and potential of the niche is very high, give it a 4. Somewhat high, give it a 3. Somewhat low, give it a 2. And very low, give it a 1. Now, lucky for you, it's you rather than me about to tally up your table. say lucky it's you rather than me. I have demonstrated a couple of times in my corporate history that I struggle to count to 4, let alone add up tables of scores. So what I want you to do as soon as you're done, because we're in Word, we're not in an Excel spreadsheet here, I actually want you to total the scores for each of the niches. So physically add up the scores, obviously leave out that digit right at the top, that's part of the example. Just total up all the scores that you have, and then I want you to place your total for each potential niche in the bold block at the bottom. So you see at the bottom of the table where it says niche total scores, for each niche put the total score for that niche in the block. Quick as you can, add up the tables. Okay, and as you get to the end of the additions, I'm about to share with you what to do with the outcomes. I won't talk for another few seconds because you've got to concentrate on the numbers. By now you should have added up the first 3, possibly 4 columns. And by now you should be reaching the very last column and be only a few seconds away from popping the final total at the bottom. And this time it's not the melodic bell and it's not the sales bell, it's the celebration bell. Woohoo! The end is very near. Hang in there, hang in there. Where you're up to by now, I'll tell you from experience, the vast majority of people who complete this exercise have revelations, because sometimes you notice that the niches that the score table shows you that you should go after, they actually might be 1 or 2 of them, not the obvious ones that you thought would come through at the start of the exercise. What else we know from experience is that for most people, your scores will not be the same across the table. There will be a couple that are absolute standouts, and there will likely be a couple that achieve much lower scores. This is a process, it's a step-by-step process, which hopefully by now has disclosed to you, at least with some score differential, what are a couple of the more obvious clusters, more obvious niches that you should really pursue, compared to others that should by now just be sitting in the parking lot on the waiting list. So here's what I want you to do. If you turn to the very next page, which has step 5, I want you to capture your results in your marketing plan. And I want you to capture them in the marketing plan as follows. just know, so if you've done it on hard copy, circle the 3 highest scores, and those would then be your top 3 niches. If you've been doing it on soft copy, just highlight them, highlight the highest scores, and the niches that have achieved the highest scores, put those in the table under the heading of top 3 niches. So the one that came first, you put in first in the table there, insert the name of the niche with the highest score here. So just replace those words with the actual name of the niche. Likewise, do the same with the second highest score and the one with the third highest score. That then tells you the 3 top niches that you probably ought to be focusing on. Then I want you to place the next 3 highest scores in the order in which they scored, i.e. ranking down to the lowest score. That will be your 6th highest score. So just replace the words there where it says other niches with each of those 3 niches. Now here's something interesting for you. Once you know which niches you should be targeting, the next important thing to complete, and this will actually be a home play, will be what are the problems and challenges of the niche, and where do they hang out, online and separately, offline. Hangout being, where do they congregate? Where do they go to get their information? Where do they go to socialize? What publications do they read? Which LinkedIn forums do they go to? Which other online forums do they go to? Do you see how much easier these questions are now to ask? So I'm going to give you a couple of quick tips. Again, I'm going to keep running with a very simple example. If I had as one of my top niches accountants, then under top 3 niches, the first one would be accountants. Problems and challenges. Having researched this industry, I know straight away one of the biggest problems is the aging population of the actual accounting industry. Another challenge that a lot of accountants would be facing is that of compliance. The compliance rules are getting more difficult. There's more of them, a little bit more onerous. Where do the accountants hang out? Well, we know there are a number of associations that many accountants belong to, but here's a tip that I want to give all of you to progress some of your research online, quick, smart, real fast. I want you to go to Google or whichever your favorite search engine is, and I want you to type in, and you've got to put this in inverted commas because you don't want a broad search, you want an exact search. So just jot this down as a home play as part of the research. Now the home play is get to Google or your favorite search engine, open inverted commas, and for my example accountants, I would put accountants online forums, close inverted commas, and I click enter. What that will do is it will do a search on Google for accounting forums, which I can then go and have a look at. A lot of those will be online forums. If I have a look, I can start to get a sense of which one of them has the most number of members. I can also watch, in many cases, the conversations that these people are having with each other. So I can have a look at the conversation threads. Immediately that's going to tell me what are some of the biggest problems that they're facing. What's topical, what's newsy, what's relevant. All of that is under research, because if I know the answers to those questions, I know what kinds of topics I need to talk about if I'm to attract an audience and ideally grow a community. I trust this is all making sense, and wow, how much easier is it to do that with 3 specific niches than with goodness knows how many, or worse than that, geez, I'm not sure where to start. So if I know I'm going after accountants, this whole exercise just got a lot easier for me. If I want to deliver a talk at a public forum, if I know I'm going after accountants, I would know, for instance, that I would try to get involved in the annual convention. It's a group of people and they bring all the accountants together in separate groups in each of the major states in the country. If I could get a guest spot to be a speaker at one of those, if I was targeting accountants, wow, how much easier would that make my whole journey of educating a reasonable group of accountants, and in so doing getting them to join my community. And it might not be a national forum, it might be a local convention, it might be a local group, it might be a local networking group. Can you see how finding out what their problems and challenges are and where they hang out is going to be instrumental to your success? So a very big congratulations, and I want you to do 2 things related to this exercise. One is, if you didn't complete each of the things along the way, I want you please to complete them. As a minimum, I want you to be confident within yourself that you've completed the evaluation table and that you've come to some conclusions. As a minimum, you've got to be really confident that you have 3 specific niches, 3 very identifiable clusters of people or businesses that you can go after. It doesn't stop you from paying attention to any others. It just allows you to hone most of your energy into this particular direction. So a couple of frequently asked questions. People often ask, well, geez, if I come up with these 3 niches, does that mean I don't spend any time doing anything else in any other niches? I would say no. You can spend time doing things related to other niches, but what this does is it gives you a focus point. There are very few businesses that are able to service everyone. If you look at examples like Google, Google doesn't have a specific niche that they go after, but even Google has some very specific niches, and they have industry heads within the organization whose job is to focus on an individual niche. So even Google takes this approach.
You are now officially at the end of the niche selection process, and wow, please stand up, take a huge bow, and give yourself a huge pat on the back. This is just such an important, fundamental piece of your marketing, and just think about how much more confident you can be now, knowing that you can really focus your time and your attention on 3 clusters, 3 niches, rather than maybe 70. So you really take a much more focused approach now to all of your tactics. What I recommend you do at this point is, number 1, work out an elevator pitch. You need an elevator pitch, a really good one that will be attractive. Step 2, make sure that you work out a very basic branding strategy so that all your messages are consistent across all your social media and other platforms. And number 3, you need to organize a Get More Leads calendar. That's a calendar of results, a calendar of tactics that you will do, that you will execute each month, because that's really where all your leads are going to come from. Yes, we have systems that help make this happen. It's a strong recommendation. Start to get your head around the Get More Leads calendar and to prepare your own Get More Leads calendar. And also at this point, you really want to get your head around the strategic interview. Because as you start to get prospects, you really want to use a system to progress those very interested prospects through from VIP, very interested prospect, to closed sale. Once again, a huge congratulations to you. Thanks for taking the time and for joining me, and I look forward to the possibility of sharing more tools with you in the future. From Anthony Gaddy, it's bye for now.